Zengin fifino CHamoru hao, por favor, corrigido, zengin lati. Zengin estudiante hao, fino CHamoru, dispensado, sa appling hatzo, fumino CHamoru. Hafide dan tiro, guahu si tamar, za estigui I hinanao-mu para ume edzak fino CHamoru. Anything worth doing is going to be embarrassing. And that's because it's embarrassing to try. It's embarrassing to put effort into doing something and then not being amazing at it right away. Earlier this month, I committed to learning my indigenous heritage language, I fino CHamoru. I've made this commitment 3 other times in the last 12 years, but each of those times ended in failure. For this 4th attempt to learn CHamoru, I am just going to acknowledge from the outset that this language learning process is going to be cringe, it's going to be embarrassing, and lean into it.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
In this video, I wanted to talk about the 3 different ways that I failed and then the mindsets that I took away from those experiences. The only thing I'm going to feel embarrassed about is quitting. In my senior year of high school, I had the honor of having si defunto Jeremy Cepeda as my CHamoru teacher. In this single academic year of my high school, I felt like I had learned so much more than all previous years combined. Senor Cepeda had a very coherent view of CHamoru identity and the ability to speak CHamoru, and in bringing that passion to class every day, he really made the CHamoru language irresistible. I just felt motivated to do well, motivated to do my homework and to learn CHamoru here and there. And so when the class ended, when I graduated from high school, I didn't feel the drive to learn CHamoru anymore. Malingu ha I malago. My desire to learn just disappeared. Knowing what I know now, I would call that kind of motivation an extrinsic motivation. It's one where the desire to do well is not necessarily tied to my values or how I see myself as a person, but more external. My takeaway from that experience is that I have to choose a motivation that's much more permanent or much more connected to how I feel about myself and the guiding principles, the guiding values of my life. And I think I've found that motivation. I'm motivated to learn CHamoru because I am CHamoru. Kumu CHamoru tsu adzui ziguhu lo ninaihu lokwi. As a CHamoru, that's my burden, but it's also a gift. Which brings me to my second lesson. Ko mámagof hao gi hinanao-mu. In college, I took CHamoru 1 and 2 with yet another really great teacher, see Dr. Miget Bavakwa. One of the class's main objectives was to get us practicing our CHamoru with our CHamoru family members in the home or at parties, etc. Unfortunately for me, menyasaga siha ifamiliaku gisenlagu aduna tempu. So during that time, I didn't really have people to practice with. I didn't feel like I had an opportunity to bring the joy of learning CHamoru outside the university. Gi senhizung I universidad. Another reason that I think I wasn't really enjoying the process of learning CHamoru at that time was that I wasn't giving myself over to the challenge of learning CHamoru. I'm a person who loves to push myself to absorb new knowledge and facts and synthesize them in my head, and I think I just wasn't committing to that with my CHamoru classes. Maybe it was because I was distracted with my academic major, just being involved in college life in general. But I think that if I had truly seen CHamoru as a fun challenge, then it would have made the process more sustainable and more enjoyable. My takeaway from that experience was that I should lean into the learning strategies that I know work for me and that I enjoy. So, for example, now some of the hallmarks of my current language journey are that I love Anki. I'm just constantly flipping through my flashcards. And then another thing that I'll do is just narrate the events of my day and my feelings throughout the day in my head. I have a never-ending inner monologue anyway, so turning some of that into fino CHamoru helps my language learning process a little bit and is just a fun way to challenge myself to use all the words that I learned recently. Okay, before I move on to the third and final takeaway, I did want to share a little funny story from that period of time. So after graduating, I decided to go to Rhoda for a month and visit my uncle who was a pastor and a missionary there. I was also kind of treating it like a little bit of a CHamoru immersion trip. And so I was so excited for this opportunity. I shared with my uncle that that's what I wanted to do during the 1 month that I was there. Listen to CHamoru as much as I can and practice it here and there. And so one day my uncle had invited me to a lunch with a couple of his friends. They were an older couple, gilitasiha. As we were about to sit down, my uncle turns to me and asks if I could pray gifinu CHamoru for the food. I said, yeah, of course, that's what I'm here for, right? I'm supposed to be putting myself in uncomfortable situations to practice the language. This is how that prayer sounded. Like I still have such a vivid memory of it in my head. It went something like, O Zeus, si Zeus maasi, hutungu na guaha zu, hutungu na hungu zu, hinanao-mu. Amen. And I think about that prayer all the time because that was all that I had retained from my CHamoru classes. Like, despite feeling so motivated to learn those earlier 2 times, I wasn't doing anything to upkeep my vocabulary, to extend my grammar structures or the kinds of sentences that I could form. I couldn't even remember the word for food. Today, if someone were to ask me to say a prayer in CHamoru, my vocabulary is probably double or triple the amount that it was when that happened. Like, I just learned the word zoasi. I know the words mamåhlåo, gineftau, nat hudzung, nat homlu. I could put all of those probably, maybe, in a prayer. So yeah, I just wanted to share that because it is a moment of my journey that has been really formative. Now when I narrate the things that are going on throughout the day or how I'm feeling about things, I will really push myself to use new vocabulary and to try new sentence structures. And I think that a lot of it is incorrect. But what makes me continue to do this practice is using that Rhoda experience as a kind of guide or as a kind of checkpoint for measuring my progress. The third and most recent time that I tried to learn CHamoru was in 2023 when I was unemployed for about 4 months. During that time, my husband and I were starting a new chapter, giya. Every week, I would hop on a video call with my dad and a few of our relatives to learn CHamoru. The people who were on that chat were uncles and aunts who had maybe grown up speaking or hearing CHamoru, but because they had lived in the States for so long or just had not been using CHamoru in so long, they wanted an opportunity to brush up on their skills and just have a little community where they could speak CHamoru to one another. It was truly excellent immersion. Like, I did have enough of a working vocabulary to understand maybe half of what was being said when they were sharing stories with one another, but I didn't really have a systematic way of learning from those conversations. I had community, I had support. They were all so loving and encouraging, And I had consistency too, right? Or at least we met every week for those couple of months. But what I didn't have was a plan to track and retain my learning. My takeaway from that experience is that I really need an actionable plan to move forward with my conversational fluency. So there are 3 things that my plan will contain. One is the use of flashcards. Specifically, I want to create and have studied 1,000 flashcards by June 16th. That's just 6 months after I set my intention of learning chamoru. Number 2 is that I have to focus specifically on my weakness, which is speaking chamoru, forming sentences and speaking chamoru. So to that end, I'm working with a conversation tutor who I'll be meeting with every week in January and onward. And third is I have to learn how to laugh at myself more. That's kind of the reason why I wanted to start a YouTube channel, is to normalize the cringe and embarrassment that is just inherent to learning anything, but especially learning a second language. Because you know what the worst thing that can happen is? It's if I make a mistake when trying to speak chamoru in a YouTube video, an actual chamoru speaker will type up in the comments the correct way to say that thing. So then I'll actually be learning. Zengen fifino chamoru how, por favor, karihizu, zengen latsi, zengen estudiante how, fino chamoru, dispensa zu, sa appling hat zu, fumino chamoru. So don't take my chamoru as the correct way of saying things. I am just ketsagi zu, kumetsagi zu, ketsagi, ketsagi hat. I didn't actually write an ending for this video, so I'll just end it by saying, Zizus Masi, Estaki.